Yes, good people, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of work on this Squier Classic Vibe 60s Mustang. I recently won this on an auction on eBay. I won it for £206 with 20 quid shipping, so just over 225 quid for a pretty sweet looking Squier Mustang. These are awesome guitars. I've had quite a few of these on the channel, but she needs a little bit of a setup. It's finished in a vintage white colour, which is almost like a yellowy butterscotch sort of colour. I think it's pretty dope. These are, I believe, now discontinued in this colours. I thought I've had a couple of these before and I fancy another one. So yeah, I just got this morning. First impressions of it, excellent condition. There's not a mark on it on the front or the back, but she definitely needs a little bit of setup work. It's got a set of 10 gauge strings on there, newish, so I'm going to roll with them today, plus the fact I ain't got any more 10 gauge strings at the minute. But 10 gauge on a 24-inch scale, that's my preference. You know, I know a lot of people like them a bit heavier, but I like a bit more of a slinky feel. But these are decent guitars. They've got an Indian Laurel fingerboard, 24-inch scale. It's an offset guitar, so the little cutouts go at a bit of an angle. You've got your vintage style tuners, you've got Fender designed Alnico pickups, you've got your in out of phase switching. But like I say, I've covered these on the channel before, so I'll put a link into the description just to give you a proper breakdown of these guitars. But they are very awesome. Unfortunately it didn't come with a wheel stick, but I don't really use them on these anyway, so I'm not really that bothered. So what we're going to do today is give her a bit of a setup. I'm not going to go too mad on it because it ain't too bad, but just needs a little bit of tweaking. And then once we've done that, we'll give her a little test run. So let's start delving in a little deeper and see what she needs doing. So we've got on the desk all laid out in front of me. I'm not going to go mad on the setup. It just needs a little bit of a tweak. It's a 2019 model, so this is the first run of the Classic Vibes. Doesn't look like it's been played a lot. The frets are like brand new and there's a lot of dust on it. So generally we just want to give her a good clean down. Put some lemon oil on the Indian Laurel fingerboard because these have a tendency to dry out. We'll check the neck relief, the string height and the intonation. It's not always best doing the intonation with used strings, but these are pretty new, so we should be okay there. The Mustangs have a floating bridge, which I don't particularly like. I like to lock them into place, but I'll show you how to do that just to help with the tuning stability. I don't really use the vibrato on these, so locking that into place makes sense to me. So the first thing we'll do is take the strings off. I'll keep them attached to the tail piece, but just put them to one side so we can access everything. Alright, so we got the strings off. I'm going to start on the neck. I've got this really fine sanding sponge. It's probably like a 1000 grit. Just going to quickly go over the frets just to get rid of the little bit of grime on the top. Like I say, these frets are like new. There's no real sharp fret end, so we're just getting a bit of shine to these frets. Don't really need to worry about the magnets on these because you got plastic covers, so it wipes off pretty easy. Okay, so onto the fingerboard. Indian Laurel, like I say, tends to dry out really easy, so this may take a couple of applications, just using some Dunlop 65 lemon oil. You can see straight away the difference before and after. Okay, see already starting to soak right in. There. Alright, so just going to rub a bit more of that around the edges and around the edges of the frets. So just going to leave that for a couple of minutes to soak in. It may take a couple of coats, but definitely bring that fingerboard back to life, a bit of nourishment. Right, so while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go over with some guitar polish to spray all the hardware and stuff, and headstock. Over there, going to take that floating bridge out. As you can see, these bridges, they really do float around, but we'll get to that shortly. Going to give the fingerboard just another quick coat with a lemon oil, just a bit lighter on this one. Right, so now that's all cleaned up and we've got the strings off, I'm just going to check the neck relief. So we've got this slotted straight edge. So what you want to look for is around the 8th fret, just to see if there's a little gap under the straight edge there, and to be honest, that is pretty much bang on straight. So basically you want this perfectly straight. If you've got a bow that goes in or sort of out, you want to adjust the truss rod. In this case it's a headstock truss rod, so you just turn it left or right, whatever way you need to make sure that goes straight. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So next we're going to go on to the bridge. Just need to quick wipe down. And like I say, I like to stop these floating, so what I tend to do is get some good old electrical tape and then apply that around the little pole pieces. So what you basically want to do is get enough tape around there just so you can put it back in the slot and stop it wiggling around. So that's going to need a little bit more. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty much perfect, and now that is solid. Yeah, so gonna get the strings back on now. Okay, so we've got the strings back on. Off camera, I've been tuning it up, stretching the strings, keep tuning it back up to make sure all the strings are fully stretched. So just want to make sure when you're doing some work on a guitar, or even if you buy a used guitar with newish strings, I guarantee 9 times out of 10 they haven't been stretched, and you do come across some funky sounding guitars and weird tuning issues. So make sure you fully stretch your strings until they stay in tune, and then you know them strings are good. So now we're going to be checking the neck relief. Now these strings actually think are 9s, there's not a lot of tension on them. Ideally, like I say, I like using 10s on these, but these must be the original strings. So because there's not a lot of tension on these strings, we ain't getting much of a pull on the neck. So I've got a feeling this is going to be quite a bit out. So capo on the 1st fret, and then what I generally do is where the neck meets the body, the 1st fret there, which on this case is what, the 19th. On the 8th fret, I want to get about 0.25 to 0.3 millimeters, and that is pretty much nothing. So we need to adjust the truss rod now. Okay, so that took a bit of turning. I had to move one of the strings out of the way to get the little Allen key to turn round, but yeah, I got pretty much a full turn there. We are bang on 0.3 millimeters now, so that's good to go. But just bear in mind, like I say, these are 9 gauge strings. I thought they were 10s, but if you do change a gauge of strings, you will need to just double check all your settings again, because obviously if you go from 10s to 11, you're putting more tension on that neck, you're going to get more of a bow. So just bear that in mind. We are all good for neck relief. I'm just going to tune it back on, and then we move on to the string height. Before we start on the string height, the bridges on a Mustang, and they're pretty much the same on the Classic Vibe Jaguar and Jazzmasters now, they have these are Mustang style bridges with the barrel saddles. So these are 9.5 inch radius to match the neck. So all you really need to do to adjust these is the little Allen screws on each side. You set the height of the high E string and the low E string, and then the middle compensates that, so you've got a perfect radius. But the low E string I want about 1.5 millimeters, and the high E string I want about 125 millimeters. Now, because I've adjusted the truss rod, put more relief in it, I've actually raised the string height, so I need to drop that bridge down a wee bit on the 12th fret, like I say, 1.5 mil. So I'm going to quickly drop that down. Okay, so we're pretty much there with that. And the height, drop that down a little bit as well. Okay, so I think we're pretty much bang on there now. 1.5 on the low E, 1.25 on the high E. Okay, so I'm going to tune that back up, just double check that again. Now we've got the string height all set, we can go on to intonation. So basically intonation, for instance on your E string, you want the open E matching the octave on the 12th fret. And to get them to match, you adjust these little saddles. There's a screw on the back of them there. Now some people have these bridges the other way around on Mustangs because it's quite difficult to get in, but that's the way I like to have them. But I like to make life hard for myself. So you need a little thin Phillips screwdriver. So you adjust these, the saddles, backwards and forwards, just to make sure your open and your octave of that note are in tune. So I'm just going to intonate all these strings. It ain't too far off, to be fair, and we'll come back and just double check the pickup height. I must confess, I just checked the intonation and it is pretty much bang on. There was very tiny little movement, so that's all good to go. Pickup height, I've just been checking that, and that is pretty much as I wanted it. I just had to raise this pickup just a little bit on the high E side. So I like to have the higher string and the lower strings, I like them a little bit raised up towards the high strings and a little bit lower on the low strings, just so you've got a bit more wiggle room for the string to vibrate. But on the bridge pickup, I like the pickup pretty close to the string. I like to have it as high as you can just before the magnets start pulling it. So when you strum the string and you see it sort of magnetizing towards the pickup, just lower it down a bit. And then to balance them out for the neck pickup, I switch between turning one off, turning one on, and when the levels are, the sound levels are even, then we're all good to go. So I think we're pretty much all set up. So let's give a good little test run. These Mustangs, my favourite position on these is the in phase. That's both the switches facing the same direction. But again, if you want a full breakdown of how all the switching works on these, I have done a video in the past. I'll put a link in the description. So for now, we're going to plug her in and let her rip.